By the way, I just got my Invisalign installed yesterday, so please bear with me with the lisp. If you want, it's Emily Fox. Today is going to be a new wrap-up best and worst best-selling foundation at Sephora. I did do a drugstore version recently. I will link that down below if you want to see it. But basically, I put to the test 11 best-selling foundation at Sephora, and I did a full wear test on all of them. So if you want to see how much a foundation oxidizes, how it looks like from up close, from very, very up close in natural lighting in front of my window, and then how it looks like 10-12 hours later, I will link each of them down below. But today's going to be the wrap-up, kind of mentioning the color range, the prices, and overall which ones were my favorite and then least favorite on me, obviously. So let's go through them. I think I'm going to go in order of the ones that I'm seeing on the Sephora website. Keep in mind that things have moved around a little bit since I started, preparing for this video, but these are all still on the first page of the best-selling foundations, so they are quite popular, and I do have an opinion on all of them now. The first one that I'm seeing on their website is unfortunately the only one that I do not own a full-size bottle of it because I hate it. When I did the wear test, I essentially did a comparison between the Fenty Beauty Hydrating Pro Filt'r Hydrating Longwear Foundation and the matte version, which is currently the #1. And this one, I actually got a full size when it first came out, hated it so much that I returned it and then got a sample size for this video solely. And my opinion did not change. I thought it was actually really enlightening to be able to see half my face how foundation wore, because you could see how much this emphasized any dehydration that I have. I forgot to mention it, but I have combination skin. So my T-zone gets oily, especially my forehead, but at this time of the year, my skin gets very, very dehydrated, mostly around my nose, sometimes on my chin, between my brows, but sometimes the foundation will give me some dehydration everywhere. It's kind of the case with this one. On my nose, it was definitely funny to be able to see on that side that it was like crusty, dry patches everywhere. And then on that side, it looked just fine. So it was definitely the foundation. But let's start with the positive. This is one of the most affordable foundations in this video. It's about $35 US. And they have 50 shades, which is definitely great. I think also one of the main things that people were very happy with is the undertones, especially in deeper skin options, were much better than in a lot of different range. Unfortunately for me, I feel like in the lighter shades, there's more of a struggle for me personally to be able to find my shade. I'm pretty neutral to cool, and the one that matches me the best is 120. I would feel like 150 is closer in undertone. Unfortunately, it's way too dark for me. It would be like middle of summer type of shade for me. So 120 is the one that I own, and it's a tiny bit yellow, but not too bad. It's also one of those foundations that actually oxidizes quite a bit, so definitely go in store and swatch it to give you an idea, or at least go like a shade or two lighter, definitely. But yes, overall for me, this was just all around a huge fail, especially when applied with a sponge, which is usually my preferred way. I do feel like it looks better with a brush in the sense that it gives me more coverage, but applying a thicker layer definitely makes me even more dehydrated. So overall for me, this is just not working. It just sits weirdly on my skin. It doesn't wear nicely, and I just really, really do not like it. And then on the opposite spectrum, the hydrating version is so good. So same thing, same price, same color range, but this one doesn't emphasize my dehydration at all. And at the same time, I am combination, so you would expect maybe hydrating to start, moving around if you have too much oils. Nope. Actually, I prefer not setting this with a powder at first. I will blot and maybe apply a bit of powder at like 5 or 6 hours whenever I'm starting to be oily. But overall, I feel like this has become like an everyday foundation for me. I just fell in love with this so hard. And I have a feeling this is probably going to become more popular than the matte one, because I feel like this would suit more different skin types than the matte version. And I would say with the sponge, it kind of becomes like light medium coverage, and it looks very, very natural, kind of glowy, but again, doesn't become oily super fast or start separating. So overall, this is a huge thumbs up, and this was a huge thumb down. The second one I'm seeing on the website is the Giorgio Armani Luminous Silk Foundation. And this is a holy grail for so many different people, and it has been a best-selling foundation for a long time. I have been testing it on and off for a couple of years, and I'm personally kind of on the fence about this foundation because I feel like you have to have perfect skin for it to look great. And I don't have that. I'm definitely breaking out. Like even right now, I'm on my period. It's always what happens, right? And I have quite a few breakouts here, and I feel like this doesn't fully cover it, / it will start emphasizing texture throughout the day. Anyway, let me start with the price and color range. The foundation is about $42 US, and they do have 30 shades in the color range, and you can see from the swatches online, it doesn't seem to go dark enough. The good thing with the foundation is the fact that they do offer, again, mini sizes, so if you don't want to commit to the full bottle, although it's almost a full bottle. But once again, the minis don't come in dark shades at all, so personally, I'm using the shade number 4, which is probably not the best match. I'm sure I can find something better. I had ordered this online again a while ago. It's a tiny bit yellow for me. And I feel like that overall the foundation wears so differently depending on your skin type. I don't feel like this is especially great on dehydrated skin, but it's not bad on dry skin. It doesn't really control your oils. And overall, it's an okay foundation for me, but I don't feel like an okay foundation you should have to spend, you know, $42 on it. But on the bright side, I do feel like this kind of dries to a almost powdery finish on its own. So if you have more normal to dry skin, you don't have to powder. It's not going to start moving around or transfer. So it's a foundation that no matter how many times I try it, I kind of feel a bit indifferent about, which is probably the unpopular opinion here. But yes, whenever my skin looks great, I do like it. But whenever it doesn't, I kind of just don't really care for it. I feel like I can find a drugstore foundation that will work better than this. Estée Lauder Double Wear Foundation. I feel like we all know this foundation. It's a holy grail for a lot of people. This is more than full coverage. You have light, medium, full, and then you have this. The foundation is $43 and they have 50 shades, which is great. I have personally a complicated relationship with this foundation. I feel like whenever I need it, I need the coverage because I'm breaking out like crazy and I just, you know, it affects me. I want to just not have to think about it. This is where it's at. It will cover everything, and if you want to look flawless on camera, in pictures or something, it will do it for you. Unfortunately, I feel like it does emphasizes texture a lot. So it's like you want to hide the acne, but then the texture is going to look worse with this, and it's kind of it's a decision to take basically. But I still go back to it whenever I need it because it's just there for me. It's like Skinny Pete for me. I hate that it doesn't come with a pump. You can buy it separately, which at that price, I don't want to have to buy it separately. I'm aware that it's because the formula is quite thick and then it will clog pretty much straight away, so that's why they don't sell it with it. But still, I personally don't apply a lot, if any, powder whenever I use this because once again, it will make it worse, but it really, really controls your oils. So it's like, I have so many complicated feelings about you. I do feel like the shades look a little bit more peachy than I would like, but personally my best shade at the moment is 1 and 2. I do feel like it looks better as the day goes on because of the oil. I feel like it looks less textury, less powdery. So I pretty much just skip the powder, let it become a bit oily and just blot. And I feel like you could see it actually in the wear test. At the end of the day, my forehead, especially because I didn't have texture there, it looks flawless, almost a little glowy, but very naturally. And that's why I'm kind of left feeling a little weirdly about this because it's always there for me when I need it, but damn the texture though. Makeup Forever Ultra HD Invisible Cover Foundation. This has been a weird experience to retest it. If you had asked me before I redid my wear test how I felt about this, it would have been mostly positive. And I feel like now, especially testing foundations back to back like this, I'm kind of not loving it as much as I used to. I did actually really enjoy it when my skin was drier, but now that I'm more combination and acne prone, I don't really feel it. Again, it's another foundation that is $43 US and they have 50 shades. However, personally, I would be very curious actually to hear your experience. I feel like the undertones are kind of weird and I'm struggling so hard to find a shade that matches me. The lightest shade is R230 and then the darker one is R300. And whenever I did the wear test, I included the oxidation of both of these. It's a possible explanation of why I'm having so much issues because the light one didn't oxidize much, but the darker one oxidized like crazy. So it probably explains a little bit my struggle. Plus, if I include the arm swatches from the website, you can see that they're either very, very red, pink, or very, very orange, peachy. And I am neither. I'm pretty neutral, like I said. So I am struggling even though they have 50 shades. So this is pretty light, medium coverage. It's supposed to look like skin and look great, you know, HD and everything. And like I said, I felt like it worked better whenever my skin was drier. But I felt like when I did the wear test and afterwards when I tested it again, I kind of just felt like it emphasized my dehydration more than I remember it doing. And I feel like now it kind of just sits a bit weirdly on top of my skin. I feel like it actually works better with a brush because in the wear test I used a sponge and I felt like it just didn't work well with my dehydration. So the brush was better, but not perfect. I do feel like I need to set this with a powder because it takes a while to dry. But I also feel like it looks kind of a little better throughout the day, but not really. Like, it doesn't become worse throughout the day. Some foundations definitely don't last. But yeah, it lasts a long time, but it's not my ideal foundation. So this is one of them that I'm a little disappointed with it, but I don't hate it. But I feel like for that price, I don't want to, you know, just be okay with the foundation. I want to absolutely love it. So for me, this is kind of a bit meh. Too Faced Born This Way foundation, $39. They have 35 shades. Originally they had less. I do have like very old arm swatches. I'll include them. I don't have the other shades, unfortunately. So they have improved their color range. I used to really enjoy this whenever my skin was drier. I feel like it might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion because back in the day, some people were telling me that it didn't work for them. But I feel like, again, it's something that I use usually during the summer, and I'm kind of less in love with it now that my skin is more combo. It is medium coverage. It doesn't overly emphasize my dry patches, which is why I feel like it might work better for drier skin. I do feel like it settled a tiny bit more into lines that I rarely ever mention that in a review because I rarely noticed that. I don't really have that issue, at least yet, but I felt that one a little bit, so definitely just wanting to throw that out there. And I feel like overall it just set a little bit more on top of my skin than I remember it doing, so maybe not ideal for my skin type at the moment. But again, I would be very curious to hear other people's experience because, again, it's funny, the ones that I was able to test when my skin was dry and now oily, to see that my opinion completely changed on them. So this one is kind of a meh right now for me. Color wise, by the way, porcelain is my main shade, and sometimes during the summer I'll add a little bit of nude for it to match me better. So the match is actually pretty good for me. Finally, a holy grail product again. This is my baby. I have talked about this foundation so much, and you will continue to hear me talk about this forever. It's the one I'm wearing right now because I needed the coverage, like I said. Lancome Teint Idole foundation. This is so freaking good. 50 shades. I'm not sure they're all available at Sephora though. But what I love about this is that they tell you the undertone, which is like, yes, finally. So basically you get to choose your color, but also C for cool, W for warm, and N for neutral. So personally my two shades is 110C and then 220C. I'm currently wearing 220 and it matches me really well most of the year, and then during the winter I'll use the 110. And I'm so in love with this. So this foundation overall, I feel like kind of has a natural, almost a little bit powdery finish on its own. If you have drier skin, I did try this actually when my skin was dry, and I used to only use it whenever I was going out or, you know, like I needed to look flawless like all night long, because it works really well without being powdered. Now that my skin is oily, I've used this on a daily basis for a while now. This is like my third and fourth bottle or something, so I am aware of how it wears now. I have worn this very often for like very, very long periods, like 15 hours, like going on a trip, and then, you know, I applied it at 5 in the morning and 11 at night. It still looks flawless. Obviously, I will repowder probably twice in that amount of time, but it just stays in place. It doesn't move around. It doesn't separate. It doesn't emphasize my dehydration, which when does something this, you know, medium to full coverage doesn't emphasize dehydration, it's so difficult to find. And yes, it's just overall such a staple for me. I just never want to be without this, and I will continue to rave about this forever and force all of you to try it because it is just that good. This has been out for years, by the way, and I feel like it was so underrated. I feel like it's starting to become more and more popular, and I will continue to rave about this forever. So this is a huge thumbs up. This is definitely one of the best ones for me out there. The Dior Airflash foundation. The video when I did a wear test was a first impression, and I have since worn it more to put it more to test, obviously, so I can do full review. But I have weird feelings about this. First off, I think that the spray is so gimmicky. Like, I don't want to spray paint my face, and they do say to like apply it directly, which I can't do that. I will just breathe in and just, I just don't do it. Anyway, 25 shades, they definitely need some darker ones, and it is $62, which is why I only tested it now, even though it has been a best-selling foundation at Sephora for the longest time, because one, again, gimmicky, second, it is very expensive, and I don't feel like this is gonna last me that long. I do feel like it looks nice, like a natural medium finish. It definitely looks like skin. I don't feel like it overly emphasizes dehydration. I do want to mention that there is quite a bit of perfume in it. I don't smell it once it's on my face, but I do feel like it's important to mention it if you are someone that gets migraines, for example. Definitely not for you. One really good thing about it though is the fact that it doesn't oxidize. So the shade that you see whenever you apply it directly to your hand is pretty much the shade that's going to be on your face. So that's definitely practical. I feel like too many foundation dry like way darker. So this one is definitely very even. I do feel like it emphasized my pore a tiny bit more than I would like it to. I feel like it's rare again that I will mention my pores because I don't really have an issue with pores, but if you do, I don't think this would work for you. For me personally, I can easily make it work by applying maybe like a little bit of like pore primer or something. But yeah, I just thought I would mention it because again, if that's something that is a problem for you, not the foundation I would recommend. They do say that it can last up to 12 hours. And I did notice during the wear test that about like 11 hours is when it started kind of shifting a little bit, especially on my chin where I'm dehydrated but oily. So definitely not something that you can wear super long if you have more oily skin especially. So I think this foundation would work again if you have pretty much perfect skin or if you just wanted to, you know, look nice for a couple of hours. So personally, I don't necessarily think this is worth, you know, spending like $20–30 more than the other foundations here. But you know, if you want to try it, it's not bad. Oh, and by the way, I'm the shade 104. It looks way darker in the bottle than it did on my face, so don't worry. The next foundation is a new favorite for me. I actually tested it because of this video and I fell in love hard whenever I wore it. First impression is basically me raving about it the whole time, and I had to like cut off footage because I kept just raving about it, and I kept telling myself this is just a first impression, don't go too crazy, you know, it might not wear nicely, but it did, and I am in love. The Dior Backstage, this is the face and body foundation, and oh, this is so freaking good. So this foundation is $40 and they have 40 different shades, which seems to be pretty evenly distributed. Obviously, those are the swatches online. I would have to go in person to confirm, but again, feel free to leave me a comment letting me know how you feel about it. It is a medium coverage foundation with a sponge, so I apply a very thin amount, but it just looks like skin while drying matte on its own. It does give me some good coverage. My favorite part about it is that it looks so natural, doesn't emphasize my dehydration. I personally just skip powder with this, and again, I am combination. I get oily on my forehead. I will probably blot and maybe repowder again after 5–6 hours whenever I do get oilier. My only negative thing about this is the fact that it does have perfume in it. Personally, whenever it is dry on my face, I don't smell it. Some foundations definitely do that to me, but not this one. So again, unless you're very sensitive to fragrance, I would still think this is worth a shot. This is just new holy grail for me. I have been enjoying this a lot. Oh, I would say this probably works better if you have more like normal to oilier skin. You can probably get away with this if you have drier skin with applying a bit more moisturizer or maybe an oil beforehand, but yes, amazing. Another one by Giorgio Armani. This is the Power Fabric Longwear High Cover Foundation, and I have the shade 5, which is definitely a summery shade for me, which is when I tend to use this foundation. It looks super dark in the bottle, doesn't look that dark on me. So this one is $64, which I believe this is the most expensive or one of the most expensive in this video, so it's definitely out there. They have 30 shades and the swatches online look so freaking weird. Like, look at them. They look all so peachy. From the swatches that I've seen in person, like whenever I went in person to find my shade, it looked better than that. But again, feel free to confirm or inform in the comment section because 5 doesn't look that crazy in person compared to the swatches online. What I like about this is that it gives me a matte skin-like finish whenever I use a sponge. It just spreads very nicely, very thinly, while still giving me medium coverage. I do think I need to use some powder wherever I do get oily, so I could skip, you know, my nose and my cheeks, but I definitely prefer setting it with powder on my forehead and chin. I do feel like it clings a tiny bit on dry patches, so personally I would recommend it more for the summer or if you have more normal to oilier skin. But what I like is that it doesn't oxidize, so whenever you swatch it on your hand, that's pretty much a color it's gonna dry to. And I do tend to, once again, reapply some powder about 5–6 hours, but I feel like it is very consistent. It doesn't separate, it doesn't go crazy, it doesn't feel weird. You know, some foundation, whenever you've worn it for a while, it just starts feeling kind of gross and you just want to wash it off. So not an issue with this. It definitely looks really great all day long. So overall for me, this is a great foundation, but I personally prefer only using it during the summer. Last but not least, the Too Faced Peach Perfect Comfort Matte Foundation. It is $36 and they have 30 different shades. Once again, I do feel like they would need to extend their range. The most negative part about this is the scent. It smells very strongly, not of peach, sadly, but of fig, which I'm not really a fan of. Whenever it's been on my face for, you know, a couple minutes, I don't smell it anymore, but again, I want to throw that info out there. I feel like this works really well if you have normal to oily skin. My issue is that I feel like it emphasizes my pores a bit more than I would have liked, again, around here, which is usually not an issue for me. I tend to wear this solely in the summer because, again, matte. I feel like it's better for me whenever I use something that is oil controlling during the summer. But it wouldn't be my first recommendation if you're very self-conscious about your pores or if you have dry skin during the winter, for example. Personally, I am using the shade Porcelain and it matches me most of the year. I would have to go lighter during the winter, but again, I don't need a winter shade because it would be too drying for me. What I like about this is that it controls my oils so well. Like my forehead barely looked any shinier than in the morning after like 10 plus hours. So that's definitely one of the best ones for that. It didn't overly emphasize my dehydration, but again, personally, it is one of the ones that looks the best on me, except for the little pore sections. So I have, again, a little bit complicated feelings with this at this time of the year, but during the summer, it's a go-to for me. I really, really enjoy this. I completely understand why it is popular. I just wish it didn't smell of fig. So yeah, personally, this is definitely another favorites. I feel like it just wears so nicely if you have any type of oiliness into your skin because it just, you can blot after a few hours. You don't even need to powder and it just looks flawless. I adore this. You just can't feel it on your skin. So that's why during the summer, it is definitely one of my go-to foundations. Okay, so those were my 11 reviews of best-selling foundations at Sephora. Please feel free to let me know in the comment section how you feel about any of them. And if you have any other best-selling foundation at Sephora you would like me to do a second video on, because I can definitely do that. Once again, I will link all the info on these foundations, all the wear tests, and then the past video on the drugstore version down below, so you can check those out. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe because you definitely don't want to miss any future videos. And I will be putting some more on the screen that I recommend you check out, and I will see you in my next one. Bye. We survived the lisp!